Oh, hey, what's up? Alright. Man, what a night. Do. Let me just make sure I got nothing here. Oh. Alright. Let me go ahead and hey Mass, you there? I think Mass had to step away for a minute, so he might not be here just yet. Um so tonight, as I get started here, I'm gonna update my Discord real quick. And there we go, perfect. And let's see here. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna talk about tonight? What are we gonna talk about tonight? Halifax. Nothing yet. Nothing yet. Just got on. Sorry guys, a little bit late tonight. Finishing up Stranger Things 2. So, you know, of course, that was an awesome show. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend it. I liked it. I had a lot of fun watching that show. Really good show. Um, but what are we gonna talk about tonight? Oh yeah. Crafting. That's right. That's right. So last night during some of our discussion, we we kind of got off on a bit of a, I don't want to say a tangent or a side path, but kind of off topic a little bit. And turn down the music just a tad more. All right. And during our discussion, as we were kind of going through stats and things like that, being static versus dynamic and all this, something came up which was around crafting. And an idea was sparked, and I wanted to kind of talk about that idea a little bit more tonight. Um, I don't know. I think I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this one because. So what do we got here? Well, this is the idea that came up. It was around crafting. It was around changing stats, potentially having some risk versus reward when it comes to crafters and being able to manipulate stats on certain items, even being epic items. So I don't want to mess this up, so I'm trying to make sure that I remember exactly correct. Like I said, I just ran downstairs as soon as I got done with the episode. Um, so basically, the conversation led into, if let's say that you have, and we use the example, the Dream Crusher. I'm going to continue using this example. So this mace called the Dream Crusher. Let's say that sorry guys, one second. Okay, sorry about that. Like I said, I am not prepared, not set up in the least bit. I literally just sat down in my chair, hit start stream, and here we are. So let me collect my thoughts here. I've got everything set up now. I believe I'm good. I don't need to touch the keyboard anymore. I can just talk and kind of, let out some of these thoughts. So here's the idea. Last night we started the discussion on stats. When starting the discussion on stats, we started the discussion of crafting and maybe having a little risk versus reward in that system, and how a crafter might be able to manipulate stats ever so slightly. So I'm going to use the example as I used last night. I like the example. I'm going to say that we have a cleric mace that is called the Dream Crusher, and this so-called Dream Crusher has we'll just throw it has 5 intellect and 7 charisma. And again, I'm not sure what all the stats are going to be within Pantheon, so these are completely just uneducated guesses. But let's say that you have that quote-unquote Dream Crusher mace, and you're able to manipulate the stats a little bit. So we talked about a few things. We talked about, one, being able to potentially do a low risk but lower stat gain procedure that let's say I want to take 2 of my charisma, so I have 7 charisma, 5 intellect. Let's say I want to take 2 of the charisma and I want to transfer it over from charisma to intellect. Well, as a crafter, I can manipulate that weapon. I can change it ever so slightly to shift those stats over. So let's say I want to take 2. Well, if I'm taking 2, I have and I think last night I gave it a 90% success rate. So as a crafter, you have a 90% success rate in manipulating that weapon so that it transfers those 2 stat points from charisma over to intellect. Well, again, you still have 10% chance that you're going to fail. Failing in this case won't mean that you completely destroy the weapon. It would mean that you would potentially lose those 2 points. Now, something that Mass brought up, and I really liked the idea, was also maybe you could even have a way for them to gather raw material, whether it be just gathering as far as harvesting goes, mining, so on and so forth, or maybe it's something as, you have to go complete a quest of restoration to gain certain types of material for certain types of items, and if you mess those items up, you have to go through this lengthy, long process to get the material so that you can go repair it. Not that you can go change it to what you wanted it, but you can go repair it back to its original state. And once at its original state, then you can do the same attempt again, which is you have a 90% chance of changing 2 charisma over to intellect. So I started thinking about this a little bit more, and I was like, man, this is I don't know. I'm a part of me thinks that this is an absolutely amazing idea. And then there's part of me that goes, but I want to take it to the extreme. I want to make it so that if I'm able to do that, that's great, but that 10% of the time when I mess up, I mess up bad. And it's one of those down in history mess ups where there's no coming back. And potentially maybe it's a permanent mess up. Maybe it's a mess up of I lose the 2 stats, and that's it. There's no questions asked. Or maybe it's a mess up of I completely destroy the weapon and I lost even more than that. I don't know. Maybe that's too much. Maybe that's too hardcore. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But to elaborate on that, we talked about as well being able to shift 3 charisma or 4 charisma or even potentially 5 charisma. So you got 7 charisma. Maybe you can shift 5 of that over to intellect because maybe you just want to stack intellect on your cleric. But the chance of failure increases each time. And once you get up to 5 charisma that you're transferring over, hey Mass, I'm just getting it started here. So Mass, I'm not going to go back over everything I said, but basically I'm going on the basis of what we talked about yesterday with the whole crafting system, risk versus reward, changing points around, shifting those. I want to talk about that a little bit more tonight. I like that idea. I really liked it. So we talked about, again, if you're starting with that 2, you have a 90% chance of failing. Maybe those points are gone and you can no longer ever go get those points back, or maybe you can complete a lengthy series of events, whether it be a quest line or whether it be gathering material, whether it be slaying an epic monster to gather its tooth or something like that, so that you can grind that up in a forge deep in a dungeon to combine it with some other material that's hard to find, to restore that item. I don't know. Maybe it's a Fang of Restoration or something like that. Who knows?
Right.
But again, you have these potential different ways of getting that stat back, or potentially, if you want to go hardcore, you can even say, no. Once you lost it, you lost it. So, let's say that you have the 2, you're moving 2 charisma over, so you have 7 charisma and 5 intellect. You want to move 2 of that charisma over to the intellect, so you're going to end up with 7 intellect, 5 charisma. That's a 90% success rate. Great. Well, let's say you want to make it 3. You want to move 3 charisma over to intellect. Well, then you're going to drop that 90% potentially down to maybe, we'll make it a little more extreme this time. We'll say 70% for 3 success rate. We'll say it's a 50% chance for 4. So if you want to move 4 charisma over to intellect, it's a 50% chance. And let's say you really want to go to the extreme. You want to move 5 over, and that's as much as the game will allow you to move over. It's as much as we've offered. You move 5 over, but you only have a 30% chance of success. And again, it's a chance that maybe you're willing to take, but if you may, let's say that, let's go with the whole Fang of Restoration, aspect. Let's say that you have a Fang of Restoration. You're like, you know what? Let's go for the 30%. Let's go for the 5. And you do it, doesn't work. You restore it, and you're like, let's go for it again. You do it, and guess what? It doesn't work. Or maybe you do it on the first try. Now you got that Fang you can just hold on to for a rainy day. Who knows? Or maybe you can sell them. Maybe they're tradable. I don't know. There's a lot of options here. But basically what I'm getting to is the thought of this that really intrigued me was manipulating the items. That was actually really the part that intrigued me the most, and it was the fact that crafting would have the ability to potentially manipulate these items in a way that makes crafters extremely viable in Pantheon. Something that I personally love, and I haven't seen as much focus on in past MMOs. So, Mass, are you caught up?
Oh yeah, I've been kind of just listening. I just wanted to let you know I'm back.
Okay, perfect, cool. So, are you a big crafter, Mass?
Oh yeah. Oh, I love crafting in games. I also love hunting down materials and finding new recipes. All that really gets me going.
Nice. So, and I'm kind of the same way. Like I told you last night with the mounts, I'm a collector in games. I love to collect things. If I'm a crafter, if I'm a, let's say I'm gonna pick one here on the board of crafting options I've got. So I've got scribe, and let's say that I'm a researcher. Let's say I'm a scribe researcher. So I'm gonna focus on crafting spells for the most part. For me, I want to be able to craft every single spell in the game. And if I can't, I want to be able to get to a point where I can craft as many as I possibly can. Maybe there's certain requirements that limit me on different things, but again, I want to be able to do that because I'm a collector. For me, in past games, there's really not a lot of benefit in that. Yeah, sure, I was able to create every spell in the game. I had top tier. And when I was first able to craft them, it was awesome because I made a lot of money off of it. But then over time, people didn't need the spells anymore, and there really wasn't a whole lot for me to do. Wasn't a whole lot of gain in it. So if I'm thinking about it, if I'm thinking about someone who can manipulate stats on a weapon, well then I would like to find a way to also look at the different abilities and things and say, how can other crafters contribute to this? How can we kind of give other crafting roles which is viable in the game? So I'm going to pick on making spells because making spells is something I've done in the past. And it's something that, like I said, at first, it's amazing because everybody's like, I gotta have that new spell, gotta have that new spell. And then all of a sudden, you literally just run out of people to sell it to. Because everyone that wants that spell has that spell, and you've got other scribes or researchers that are now able to make that spell. The market, the value on it is dropping, and literally that's all you can do. That's it. And you're sitting there going, okay, well, what can I do to not only one, make myself viable in the market because I've got a crafting skill. I'm the best in the game at it, but even then, I'm not really, I have nothing I can do that's going to continue to profit for me until new spells come out or something new comes out for me to go learn or go find. But, I'm the top of the talent. I have no ability. So when I think of like something like manipulating stats, let's say like an armorsmith, weaponsmith, they can have the ability to potentially manipulate stats. This is a theory, by the way, just so nobody gets that confused. Well then, that's longevity. That's awesome. Well, how can we look at the other ones like a leatherworker? Maybe I'm manipulating a sword, and by breaking it, I'm breaking the handle off, and I need a leatherworker to come provide expertise in creating a better grip or a new grip for my weapon because I've just butchered it when trying to manipulate the stats. Um, maybe I've got I don't know, maybe I've got, again, I talked about the Fang of Restoration. Well, maybe that Fang of Restoration only works on certain spell books that are held in the offhand. And maybe because of that, I need someone that can take that Fang of Restoration, and let's think of like a Harry Potter situation where I got to take that Fang and I got to dive it into a book and let it soak into that book. And the only person that can truly do that is a researcher that deals with spells and paper material, parchment, things like that. They're a master of creating these spells, these books, putting this paper together and making meaningful. Well, they're the only one that can actually take that Fang of Restoration and properly use it to write that spell out. And that spell may be a one-time use only, but I need that spell to then restore whatever I've just tried to manipulate or change. Be a book and held in the offhand, or be a goblet, or I don't know, anything for that matter. Crystal ball, who knows? But again, when I think of coming from that first original thought of manipulating the stats with different types of personnel here, I mean, really, we have a weaponsmith, an armorsmith, a tailor, a leather worker, a bowyer, well, even a carver as well, because wands and staffs. All these are potentially able to manipulate different items. You also have a jeweler, which again, looking at manipulation of stats on items because jewelry is going to be in there. And then you have professions like sculptor, engraver. You have researcher, brewer, chef, alchemist. I'm not sure what the two specializations are for the alchemist role, but you have the alchemist role. And my thought is, well, how do we make it to where these benefit off of each other? So if I do have the ability, because when I think of even something so small, I like to go a little deeper. When I think of something so small as a weaponsmith having the ability to manipulate 2 charisma into 2 intellect on a weapon, well, okay, that right there tells me that a weaponsmith is going to be viable for here on out, forever, just because of that ability alone. People are going to continue to get new items. They're going to continue to need to have that done. And if there's a risk on there of potentially failing, well, then the better the weaponsmith is, the less risk there's going to be. Yeah, they're going to be in high demand to have top tier weaponsmiths out there. Well, then how can I take some of those other individuals? How can I take a brewer? How can I take a chef? How can I take an alchemist? How can I take a sculptor? How can I take these individuals, and find ways to utilize their skill sets as well long term? And maybe I could even wrap it around that one idea of manipulating stats. So a lot of things there, big broad variation. But again, just talking about crafting in general tonight, and starting it off with the the stat manipulation. So with all that said, any first thoughts on that, Mass? Like, I mean, anything that jumps out to you, like as far as keeping crafters alive throughout the game? Because I know you said you like crafting, right?
Yes, and I think there's 2 big important pieces to keeping crafting alive. And I don't mean to oversimplify things, but I think it is that, they're more complicated in themselves, but I think there's 2 important parts. The first is that crafting has to be interesting. If it's just select something from a list and hit the button, people are going to get bored of it really quickly. You should have to go out, collect materials. There should be some kind of engagement for a person who wants to be a crafter, more than just having 10 piles of materials and clicking the button until you're out of materials. And the second, as you were just talking about, is relevance. If you stop being relevant around level 20, and anything you make under, let's say, blacksmithing is not relevant after level 20, there's no point in no point in investing because just go find one and you'll upgrade past them anyway. And I think, like you said, there is, it can be tough to get that balance right because you don't want to just, oh, well, you never have to adventure because you can just have someone craft your great gear, but you also don't want, oh, all your gear comes from adventuring. Don't bother with crafting because in the long run, it's not going to be worth shit. Ooh, excuse me.
No, you're good.
I don't know if you have the mature filter on.
I'm a Marine, man.
Okay, I got a foul mouth sometimes.
You're not even close yet, so.
All right, I'll step it up. I'm kidding, of course. And I think those are the two big parts: relevance and entertainment value.
Yeah.
You've played EverQuest, I know.
Yep.
I think one of the big things EverQuest did right was having crafting interdependence. So you want to craft something in blacksmithing, you need leather padding from a tailor. You want to, you want to make jewelry, you need something from an enchanter. That interdependence kind of made a trade skill economy that pushed everything forward, that you needed crafters from something else to be able to continue your work as well. And if you want to talk about community, which Pantheon always talks about, that is a great way to make a crafting community because you get your contacts. You know who your reliable tailor is, who's always going to have your back with leather padding. Yes, sorry, Grimhelm, I am chatting with Saicred. Is it Saicred or Saicred?
Saicred. Oh, sorry, Saicred. Can you hear me, Mash? Sorry. Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's Saicred. I hit mute by accident.
I was wondering. I was uncertain.
Yeah. So, and I did the just to clear that piece up. So I did the what is it called? Community Spotlight in October. And one of the things was, how did you get your name or come across your name? So, I used to be Saicred, and I spelled it the correct way: Saicred shot, Saicred sword, Saicred shield, yada yada yada. All these different Saicreds, over the years. And everybody I knew, because I used to do Saicred and then change the last part of the variation there, everyone just called me Saicred. So I think it was sometime during WoW and in the mid 2000s, a little bit after like BC time frame, maybe like 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. But one of my friends was like, dude, you should just change your name, because I actually had a paladin healer named Saicred Heals, and there was a 12-year-old kid on YouTube that became very popular, and everybody kept calling me a fanboy because of it. And I wasn't upset about it. I just kind of became a little bit annoyed about it because I didn't even know who it was until people were telling me about it in the game. I just happened to have the same name as him and be the same class. And again, I was like, you know what? I got to go change my name. So I went and paid $25. And I literally spent like 20 minutes trying to figure out a way to spell sacred in a way that still got the same message across, that I wanted my name to be Saicred, but it was a little bit different spelling from there, so that I could use it in different games as well. So
right, I actually had a friend who used
Olafaxon, man, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate that.
But he had the name Pew Gemini, and everyone took it as, oh, you're PewDiePie's twin. That's what you're trying to say. And that drove him absolutely crazy because he had no relation to PewDiePie whatsoever. He didn't even watch PewDiePie or like him. But everyone, when they saw his name, would be like, oh, PewDiePie's twin. You're a PewDiePie fanboy. So I definitely know how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it's not like I have anything against the guy, and that he didn't have anything against the guy either. It's just, it gets annoying when that's the only thing people can associate your name to. So
Right. It's the Rocky Four. You know, you want to be your own person. You don't want to be Rocky's robot.
There you go. There you go. So okay, so we were talking about crafting, and basically what you were getting at was we got to make it fun and we got to make it something that's gonna be meaningful.
Yeah.
That's the simplest way you can put it. Now, when you say you don't want to just stack 10 items or have 10 stacks of items and hit the button to craft, what are your thoughts around that? Like, what are you actually trying to say there? What's your?
Well, you've played EverQuest. Have you played EverQuest 2?
I have not played EverQuest 2. No.
Okay. I actually explained this a little while ago, but in EverQuest 2, the crafting system.
Halifax, and man, I appreciate it.
You pick the item you wanted to craft, and
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Window with the item.
You're the first sub that's not been a close friend of mine,
of
so thank you so much.
That you could achieve, and then you'd have two bars: your progress bar, which started at 0, and your quality bar, which started at 75 to 100, based on the materials you used. And at that point, every couple seconds, it would run a check against your skill, and it would increase the progress, and if you get a failure of some sort, decrease the quality. But on top of that, it also had events come up during it, which I did tailoring in there. What they did was like they'd have your thread catch in your sewing machine, or you'd miscut some fabric, and then you'd have your abilities. You could grab your scissors to cut the thread that caught. You could, recut your fabric to try and make it fit again. And that would bring your quality back up. And if you failed to react to it, or if one of your abilities was on cooldown and you couldn't use it, then it would be considered a critical failure, and your progress and your quality would go down. And so it was kind of an engaging mechanic for it, and you could be rewarded because if you did really well in this little mini game, you bumped up the quality of the item you made, and you could get a better version of it.
Okay, so that's an EQ too.
Yeah.
Now,
I think that
no, you're fine. I've never heard about that, but I'll have to look into that. Now, did you play Vanguard at all?
I played for a very short time, and then life got crazy, and by the time I got free again to get back to it, it was canceled. It is one of my greatest regrets in the MMO world.
Well, I'm right there with you. I was actually going into college, and then shortly after that into the Marines. So I was like, the worst time for me to possibly get into a new game was that. I will say though, so I've heard a lot of good things though about the Vanguard crafting system. I've never been able to find. I mean, I've researched it, and I've not found a lot of information on it, unfortunately. It seems like though, it seems like the Vanguard system, and here's the thing, it was a hit or miss with people. They really loved it because it seemed very complex, but then other people were talking about how they didn't like it because it was so hard to get into. Like it really had no easy learning curve to it. Other people were saying, yeah, it didn't have an easy learning curve, but it was so rewarding. It was so much, you had to spend so much time and effort to really learn it, to really master it. And it was so rewarding for that reason alone. So I've never experienced that, but I've been trying to find somebody that has, because I think it might have been similar to what you're talking about. There might have been something in play there. Or I don't know how exactly it works, but that's something I haven't heard about before, the EQ2. So let me get this straight. When you're crafting as a tailor, you actually did your action bar change?
Yes.
Okay.
And you had a specific action bar for your trade skill class. And you would level up as your trade skill class, and you would gain new abilities that would help you react to things. And then as you did more difficult combines. Like you're no longer making ragged robes, you're making like a king's vest or something. You'd have brand new events come up that you've never seen before and have new ways to react to.
Huh. Okay. So I think I've heard a little bit about this and I didn't quite understand it, and now I'm starting to understand it because I heard about crafting level versus adventurer level. People were talking about this in the forums, and I've read it throughout the forums for months now. And literally every time I read it, I go, okay, I think I get it. But I really have never gotten it. It's never clicked. It's just clicking with me. I'm understanding now. I'm starting to see the light. So what I'm hearing is that when I'm crafting in, let's say EQ2, I have a crafting level. As I'm crafting, I'm gonna figure out, okay, when I hit this part, when the thread gets tangled up and I gotta cut the knot out or something like that, I'm gonna have to do this over and over again to figure that out, to experience that. And by doing it over and over again, I'm gonna continue to build my crafting level, and my crafting level is gonna determine what skills I have to address that knot, whether it be cut it out or whether it be I'm good enough that I can actually pull it apart and not have to cut it, don't have to damage the thread or anything like that.
Exactly.
Okay, that's starting to make a little bit more sense to me now, especially some of the forums that I've been reading and stuff like that, because people were really concerned with, I want to just craft. I heard this over and over again. I want to just craft. Can I just craft and level up, the same as an adventurer would, if they don't want to craft? I don't know if Pantheon is going to go that route exactly. And here's the only reason I say that. I don't think that's a bad route. I think that's actually really neat. It sounds really neat. But what I've heard is that there's not a complete separation in crafting versus adventuring. It's well, they might be able to go that route still. It seemed like there was a slight variation between crafting and adventuring, level wise. Like you could actually, like, you could only level your crafting skill up as much as your adventure skill or actual level would allow. Which I'm not sure how EQ2 worked, but it seemed like a lot of people were saying that in other games, maybe they were talking EQ2, maybe something else, they actually were able to level their crafting up as much as they wanted to without having to worry about going out and doing anything realistically in the game as far as to level their character up. So I saw a lot of people in the forums talking about that. They wanted to be able to just craft, just level their crafting up to max. They didn't want to worry about doing the adventure stuff. They didn't want to go to dungeons. They didn't want to do raids. They don't want to do any of this. And I think the response that I saw from VR for Pantheon was more or less, we understand, we get it, but however, we're actually making the game to where, adventuring, you're going to have to adventure to find the material, and to get to some of the material, you're going to have to be at a certain level. And then to utilize some of the material, you're going to have to be at a certain level, adventurer level, to utilize it, because, basically what they're saying is, sure, you could become a crafter and sit there, and if somebody brings stuff to you, you can craft all day long, and that's great. But if you really don't have the experience in the world to go gather the material and know how the material is utilized or used, then you can't fully effectively use it as a crafter, as well. Yeah, that was the kind of gist of the conversation that I was getting. So I was kind of lost on this, so I'm gonna have to go back and read some of those forum posts, and maybe I misread it because, again, I was a little bit lost on the concept, and it makes a little more sense to me now. But I'm curious to see how that turns out, because, again, if you separate that level completely, I don't know. That makes a lot. That puts a lot of options on the table, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from hearing what you're saying, it's kind of going to go with more of those. Oh. Sorry, Grimhelm says, just sounds like those players want an easy game to me. But
I agree.
I think I do know that, like, some people aren't in it for the adventure. They want to play the master crafter, and the dungeons not their thing, exploring not their thing. But if I could sit there, work the market, and work materials and become a master crafter, that's what they want to do. And I think there's some validity to that, but at the same time, I think to just cut off 2/3 of the game, adventuring and exploring, would be. I just feel like you're losing out so much more than you're gaining. But again, I'm not one of those people. So
So I will say this, and I think this really is something you have to remember as well. When thinking about crafting and Pantheon, let's think about Amber Fate. There's a forge in the middle of a dungeon that it has to be you have to utilize to potentially craft or weld or smelt or whatever. Some of the most, there's an anvil in the middle of the dungeon there that requires you to not only have the ability to get into Amber Fate, so you have to you have to acclimatize yourself to either the wind shear or the cold or both.
right.
But you also have to venture through the dungeon, and then you have to get to the forge and potentially acclimatize yourself to the heat, scorching, and toxic, or whatever other acclimatization that you need. To do all of that, I mean, so let's say that you're a crafter, you're a pure crafter. That's all you want to do, and let's say that they allow you to craft as high level as you want to craft. I mean, yeah, that's great, but in reality, you're never going to be able to do the best crafting until you get out there and go explore and take a little risk to get to some of those spots to where you can use that anvil in the middle of that dungeon so that you can actually craft the gear at the top tier level. Besides that, if you don't use it, then you're crafting subpar gear, and or you might not even be able to craft some of the material, period, because some of the material may require that scorching giant anvil, and some of the, I don't know, the climate that's around it to be successful. So I think that they're doing I think that they're doing it in a way that maybe they're saying, yeah, sure, you can craft. That's all. If that's all you want to do, you can do. That's fine. But we're not going to give you the best of the best until you get out and actually play the rest of the game.
I am completely okay with that.
I am too. For me, I love crafting just as much as the next guy. But honestly, I'm playing this game because I want to play the entire game. Crafting to me is a major part of the game, and that's why I love it, because it's a major staple in the game. But it's not the only staple in the game. It's not the only pillar, the only piece of the game that I want to do. If I wanted to do just crafting, I don't know, man, I'd go play Minecraft or something and just sit there and just like do random, whatever in the little box. It's a much bigger, larger experience than that. So if you're not experiencing the entire game, then I don't think you should get the reward or the perks that other people are. On that note as well, if you allow people, and this is where the negative comes into play, if you allow people to just do crafting level, if I opened up to where people could just do crafting, they walk into a city and they just craft themselves up to the level, 100 in crafting. We'll say that. Something crazy. So they're level 100 master crafter. Great. Well, now they go make a new character, they run to that city, and they level up another crafting skill. Okay, great. Now I've got a guy that has 5 level 1 characters that are all level 100 crafters, and he's never stepped foot out of a city or done anything in the game besides craft.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fine if that's if that's what his priorities are. But to me, it makes it so that you're potentially going to have players who are going to create alternates and just go and work on the crafting skill for those alternates and never have to worry about using anybody else in the community again.
Okay, so you're talking about someone completely doing it themselves so that they can shut themselves away from the community.
I mean, potentially, if you don't require in some way, shape, or form that they get out and adventure, because I mean, crafting is going to take a little bit of time to get leveled up, I hope, just as adventuring is.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Like seeing what he did in the original EverQuest, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah. So I don't anticipate crafting to be easy. But what I don't want to see is, let's say you have one of those top tier raiders in the game, and this guy he plays 12 hours a day. He's got no life. He's just doing it, man. He's getting it. Um, let's say that great, he's got all the money in the world and he wants to go and just create 5 or 6 different alternates because he needs different crafters to complete different parts of quest, and he needs different upgrades for his items and stuff like that. So he goes in the city and he drops a bunch of pennies to make it happen. And let's say that he has now 5 or 6 alts and he's literally made himself self-sufficient when it comes to crafting. He needs no one else. That to me would be like the worst case scenario. If and I'm not saying it's going to be an easy road, but I'm saying if you make it even possible, to me that's just not a great position to be in, because I mean, again, I want to make it to where if someone really wanted to do that and be self-sufficient, then they're going to have to go through a brutal process of not only leveling crafting but leveling their character as well. And if they want to do that for every single character and every single crafting class, have at it. But make it time consuming to make it hard. That way, the possibility of it being done is very, very limited. I don't like the idea of even making it to where you can be quote unquote self-sufficient. I don't even really like the possibility of making it possible. However, I know you can't completely say it'll never be possible.
Right.
I just like to make it as difficult as possible, so that it really does have meaning when you have that master tailor that you need help with creating that cloak, or that epic robe for your wizard or something like that.
Right. I think
Maybe having a massive edge on the economy. Absolutely.
making it impossible is kind of hard to do. I know. I think one good way to do that is limiting character slots. For instance, having 3 base character slots, and then you have to pay more, and you have a max of 6. And then each character can only have 1 trade skill class. That would definitely keep people from being able to become that completely self-sufficient person. On top of that, to go back to the original EverQuest, you could do all the trade skills yourself, but it takes so long to be able to do each one, and so much money that it's just not realistic for one person. Even though one single character, you wouldn't even have to make new characters, could get everything maxed out, it's just not a realistic goal to make. You need to focus. And I think that's going to be a good way to balance that is, even Mr. 12 hours a day, he might be able to max 2, but he's not maxing 8, 9 trade skills.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and exactly. You said limiting character creation, more or less. Limiting the amount of characters you can have. I do believe that's going to be a factor. Just looking at the pledge tiers, know that one of the perks is having an additional character slot.
As someone who suffers from alt-itis, I am very sad about it, but at the same time, I understand why it's necessary.
Well, I mean, I'm the same way. I've been a terrible, terrible person over the years, and I have literally created more alts than I can imagine. Oh, thanks, super. But I have the worst case of altitis as well, and again, I'm right there with you. You have to make it as difficult as possible, not as possible, but you have to make it difficult enough to where the benefit of utilizing someone else to master that for you, so that you can partner with them, is extreme, like to the point to where you look at it as I could either spend a year to get where they've gotten, or I could just use them. To me, that's the type of commitment that I would like to see. Basically saying, hey guys, look, I'm not going to spend a year to do this. I'm going to use people here. Maybe there's somebody here, that can spend 12 hours a day and get it done in 4 months. But if they want to do 4 months at a time for each one, and then hopefully at the end of their second character, they're 8 months in, maybe there's even different things that are being found as far as like recipes and stuff, some deep dungeon, dive or something like that. Maybe some experimental crafting's going on at that point in time, and some new things are being found out. Maybe they're falling behind on the crafting curve in their original slot. I don't know, stuff like that, where we just we put more of a focus, more of an emphasis on utilizing others, so that you're not trying to go do that yourself. You're really just putting more investment into the community and finding ways to again, just can build that relationship with those other crafters that you need to help with stuff like that. So one of the things that was said here, and for me, I know you played EQ2 and some other games. I played a lot of WoW, and that was one of the things that's why I was speaking of this. WoW has done that. WoW basically has made it so that you can literally be self-sufficient in crafting within just a short amount of time. You can learn everything you need to learn, more or less, and not have to worry about anybody else.
Right. What's the thing I was going to say? So on top of that, I think another big perk that keeps things from that keeps you more than happy to work with others instead of buying stuff up, or instead of trying to level stuff up, is that there needs to be an exchange where he profits by supplying you what you need, you profit by even when buying it from him, and everyone makes a profit off of it. For instance, leather padding. Leather padding was ridiculously expensive in EverQuest. I would buy like stacks at 200 plat. But when I made that fine plate out of the leather padding, that sold for much more than what I put into it, and I got that money back. So you need a healthy economy to also benefit that. Because if I can save my time by buying it from him and still make a profit, and I now have a friend who I can go to anytime I need something, and he'll push people to me anytime he finds someone who needs a blacksmith. That's how it should work. That's how it would be perfect in my eyes. Grimhelm also makes the suggestion about doing a server skill lockdown where you have to pick your crafting skill and gathering skill, and then that is your gathering skill for that server. Or crafting skill for that server.
Well, hold on. Say that one more time. I don't think I quite caught that fully.
Grimhelm basically suggested that if you lock down your skills per server, instead of going, you have 6 characters, so you get 6 skills, you go, all right, you're on the Valentine server. You've picked blacksmithing and mining. Those are your skills for this server. You can't pick another one. All your characters can work on that skill, but you can't move far from that. I don't know how I feel about that one personally, but
yeah, so for me, that's a tough one because it's it really, it feels like, okay, again, I like the game to give me what do you call it? Kind of an imaginary boundary, not
right.
a hard boundary. Meaning, I want the game to make it to where it's so difficult to work on those other professions, or to work on even my single profession, to get it to really that master crafting title. I want it to be to where it's so hard to get there that I have no desire to go and try to work on something else. But
right.
If I did, I have the option to do it. I'm not saying that I hate the idea of locking it down, because I like the kind of the artificial boundary that it's set just by difficulty versus the just hard, definitive. You can only be this.
The artificial boundary kind of brings back what we were talking about yesterday, where um, for those people who play 12 hours a day, have no job, or their job allows them to play during, um, they're going to rush through everything, and you need to make sure they're not hitting that end and being bored and leaving. And I think it comes out to trade skills too. You're going to have people who will rush through, who can manage to do 3 trade skills, 2 trade skills, because that's the amount of time they have. But you also want to make sure that they have the ability to do that, because if you say you're only allowed 1, they max it out and go, well, balls to that. Now I have nothing to do. You're gonna screw yourself. But with an artificial cap, they can kind of, the limit's soft set for them, but as much as they're willing to invest, they can get payout for.
Agreed. Yeah, and that's the key. If someone does have that, someone does have a ridiculous amount of time, I'm jealous of first off. But again, I want them to be able to continue to play the game for as much as they want to play the game and continue to see benefits from it. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Let's not alienate them just because they can play 14 hours a day. Eventually they're going to grow up and have to get jobs. But hey, while they're a kid, I was there once, and let them go at it.
Actually, I have one of my friend's parents is retired, and he's got all day long to put into games. And I am so jealous.
The dream.
Right? You got money, you got time. That's like, it doesn't exist. That's your unicorn.
Yeah. The day that I'm able to retire, collect my retirement check, and sit in front of a computer playing games all day. Hey, grandkids, come over when I'm not raiding. All right, we'll schedule it.
Yes.
But no, okay. So like I said, I don't want to. I'm trying to keep these things shorter, but man, I'm having so much fun with these. I think I'm coming up on about an hour now, and I'm trying to keep the discussion to about an hour on average. So I'm going to try to wrap it up here, and basically, let's wrap it up with what we kind of covered here. First and foremost, we want to make sure that crafting's fun, because we have to have enjoyment in it. And
Right.
sometimes there's enjoyment in a little bit of misery. So if it requires a little bit of grind, or it requires a little bit of redundancy, or it requires you to really go out of your way to make something happen that is annoying and painful, but it's satisfying at the end of it. Hey, I'm for it. Honestly, I love having a little bit of that in my game, to where it's just like, oh God, I don't have to do that again. But I did it once. Let me check that off the box.
There's no fun if everything is handed to you. You need to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we want to make it fun, but we also want to make it rewarding. We don't want individuals who pick a certain specialization or profession even to be alienated from top tier caliber crafters, because let's say that you picked a brewer and nobody cares about getting drunk in Pantheon. I don't know who those people are, because I'm definitely on board with that. But again, if there's nothing for a brewer to do when it comes to extending their profession and continuing to make things that are both profitable for them as well as meaningful for them, then what's the point in being a brewer? That's
right.
That's what you don't want to have in the game. So for them, finding ways to make sure that these different professions and specializations are both fun and rewarding is a challenge, of course, but I think it's something that really has to be done with crafting. And I know that Corey, the game designer for crafting, he's done some. Is anyone getting stream drops? Oh, Super, I'm not sure if you are or not, man. I'm sorry about that. I'm good on my end. Um, so Corey, who's done some VIP roundtables with us on crafting and things like that to kind of help give us some additional information for the VIPs. The way he describes it and the way that he goes into detail with it, I just want to let y'all know, from there are certain perks that individuals in the VIP get, and things like this where we had a roundtable with the game designer for crafting. Um, he goes into it, and you can tell by the way that he's talking, the way that he's presenting the information, that he's passionate about making crafting something that is both fun and viable, rewarding, and again, something that's going to continue to project the game in the direction they want to go, which is, for that longevity. They want to be here for the long haul. They want to be here for years and years to come. He seems to be on board with that completely, and his passion comes out in his voice when he's talking about it. He's excited about it, and that's what really got me when I was listening to him speak. Was he was excited about the crafting system and what he's doing, and how he's thinking that it's going to come out, and the possibilities within it, and just the overall thoughts as he's going through this. He's still gathering ideas and saying, what can we do to make it better. He understands potentially his way isn't the best in every scenario, every circumstance, and he seemed very open to feedback and to ideas, and seeing what he can do with those, and maybe he can make those work, or maybe he can find a way to take some of that, if he can't take all of that, and do something with it to make the game more enjoyable. So I'm really excited about crafting in Pantheon. I'm really excited about the possibility that there will be kind of no crafter left behind. That should be a motto of somebody's. I don't know, not mine, but somebody should take that up, because again, we want to make sure that there's no profession, no specialization that's just left out there in the ruins of Forgotten, where they're no longer needed past level 30. Like you said, Mass. So
Right.
for me, I'm gonna wrap it up here. But any final thoughts on crafting? I know that you love it. So is there any one thing that you would like to see more than anything else when it comes to crafting?
I am glad you asked that, because there is, and it's something that a lot of games forget or leave out, or just maybe don't maybe it hasn't reached them, and that would be fashion. Fashion is an important part of crafting for me, and I think it's important to have your high end as you go through the tiers of learning a craft, you should have the look of your work has gone better. And I'm not saying, it has to suddenly glow green and breathe fire or anything that outrageous, but, having it shiny and symmetrical and balanced, or having high level tailored things have interesting cuts on them, or patterns, is important, because you want that high quality stuff to not just be appealing because, oh, it's nice, it has stats. You want it to look of the quality that you've made.
I can definitely be on board with that. Let me see here. Sorry, I was just pulling this up. So in short, your biggest number one want when it comes to the crafting system is let's give the cosmetic look and feel to the quality that we're producing.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't say that's my number one want, because it being fun and it being useful,
well, yeah,
big, that's just kind of the point I wanted to make before we end it.
Okay, well, let's say the fun and meaningful, those are like gotta haves.
Given.
This is kind of the biggest want, I guess you could say. Like those are almost needs. This is kind of that want, and that's the way I put it in my mind. I like that. I really like that, actually. One of the things that they kept talking about, I've heard it a few times now, is they actually want crafters to be able to make some of the top tier gear, quote unquote. And I say top tier, I'm not saying like, WoWs, they have only one set of tier items. In Pantheon, you potentially have multiple sets of items you need to use at any given time based off of the raid, dungeon, whatever that you're going into. You're not going to have a one size shoe fits all. So potentially you could have a crafter who needs to create certain items, and they could be the best in slot for that particular raid or dungeon that you're going into, based off climate, based off the mobs that are in there, what abilities they have, so on and so forth. So they have said it a few times. They want crafting to be both meaningful, but also have the potential to put out some of the best in slot items for those certain circumstances. So with that, yeah, absolutely. If I've got a master crafter and he's making a breastplate for my cleric, and that breastplate is out of some ridiculously hard material together, man, I want people to know that I had to put the time and effort and the money into hiring that armor smith, for one, and then two, going to gather the material to make it. I want people to know that I put some time into that. I don't want it to just be an epic quest line item that gives me that really aha kind of look and feel. I want some crafting items that can give me that as well. So I'm right there with you. I think that's an awesome want for sure.
I really like that. Thinking further about it, like wanting the crafting to be the way to get best in slots. I think the idea of being able to craft the specific environmental items is definitely a thing that will make the game really interesting. Having to know, how to make gear that's resistant to cold, having to know how to make gear that will survive lava or whatever.
Yeah. And the look to it, you gotta have the look to match it.
Hells yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, Mass, I'm gonna end it on that, man. As always, like I said, I appreciate it. I'm trying to keep these short because I go back and I watch the videos of these, and if they're over an hour long, man, I feel like I'm over here just giving a lecture, and I don't want that to be the case. I want people to enjoy these and maybe learn something about Pantheon out of them. So
Yeah. Okay.
but all right, I appreciate it, man. As always, you're always welcome here to chat about Pantheon. I'm not kicking you out at all, so if you want to stay and talk, you can. But I'm going to kind of end the Pantheon session here and open up a game and play that. But I'm going to continue to be here, guys. So if you have questions about Pantheon or want to talk about it, continue. I'm all for continuing to talk about it. I'm just going to start playing another game while I talk about it as well. I did want to point out some things here. So if you're looking at crafting, if you're trying to figure out where to go find information about Pantheon crafting, there's a few places. Of course, we can always go to the FAQ on the site. So there is some crafting information within the FAQ. Then we also have sites like the Wikipedia page. And then there isn't a site that's going to be kind of up and coming. It's a site that I'm actually a part of as a contributor. So as Pantheon becomes released and we start really getting into crafting, we plan to have the pantheoncrafters.com website as kind of a hub for crafters that are looking to learn about it. So a few sites there, guys, that if you're looking to learn about crafting or just want to meet people that are interested in crafting as well, these are all great sites to go to look up some information and stuff like that. And then you can always hit me up, whether I'm on Twitch or Discord or Twitter or whatever you want to find me. I'm always open to answering questions or giving my opinion on different things, especially when it comes to crafting or Pantheon in general. So, Mass, again, appreciate the time. As always, thank you for your input. And then, guys, we're going to jump into some games now and just see what we can get into tonight. But thanks everybody for stopping by just to kind of talk about crafting and stuff like that.